Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. This is the Thursday, March 28th, 2019 edition of the broadcast. Glad to be back with you here tonight for another edition of the show. Got some various topics and various things I want to get into with you here tonight, as well as some other stuff I'm going to kind of freestyle on as per requests of listeners and whatnot. There's always a good response to shows whenever I talk about music stuff for whatever reason. I don't know. I try not to get into it too much because I don't want to beat the horses to death. But a lot of people were responding to the stuff I talked about in the previous couple of shows, the stuff pertaining to Dr. Dre, and then some of the other music stuff that I was talking about pertaining to the history of music. And I completely forgot, man. I just, like I said, I don't have a script or anything ever pre-prepared in front of me. I'm just going completely just off the top of my head 100% all the time. But when I was mentioning all those artists the other night, when I was talking about, essentially, people were getting mad. I was talking about Eminem. A lot of people were mad, because he hears this white kid and he's, usurping black music and stuff. And I talked about how they've been going on for years and years and years. Hank Williams, Elvis, and I skipped ahead. But yeah, I mean, into rap and all that. But it's been going on for years. But I really forgot to mention rock music too, and I guess everybody probably knows that at this point. But really, if you get down to it, all sorts of rock music, whether it's rock, hard rock, metal, punk, it's all blues based. You can all trace it back to the blues. I mean, you can sit there and play Iron Man by Black Sabbath, bow down 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 down. If you take the distortion off of it and just play it like doom 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 doom, you can see how you could, if you just played that up. That's all it is blues is just just taking a riff and sitting on it and playing it over and over again, repeat. But you can see how just that doom 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 doom, you could hear somebody rapping on top of that. In my head, you could hear somebody singing a blues song. I went down to the river, doom, doom, doom. You could hear anything like that. So it's all, it punk stuff too. You can take the distortion off a lot of this stuff. Look at somebody like Kurt Cobain who was covering, Leadbelly songs. Old black, turn 19th century, 20th century bluesman. That's, you get down to some even songs like Teen Spirit or something. That's it's a repeated riff. All that stuff goes back to blues music, every bit of it. So, my point was when I was talking about, the reason why I was bringing all that up is because to single out Eminem when you've got, like I said in the other show, the Beastie Boys, having the first number one hip hop album, and then, the stuff that the Police did, having the first hits, songs that had reggae music in it before actual reggae artists like Bob Marley had reggae hit songs. So, people always tend to get excited when I talk about the music stuff. But I'm as much a student of that as I am all the other stuff that I've talked about now. I'm going on 12 years of being on air here, whether it be esoteric stuff and studying secret societies and studying ancient religions, the priest class, studying these think tanks and secretive groups, bloodlines. I'm just as equally passionate and knowledgeable on music and the history of music and everything else. If you really want to hear like the most kick-ass hip-hop song of all time, you need to go look up 1968 Pigmeat Markle, Here Comes the Judge. Go look that shit up on YouTube. Listen to that. Listen to those fucking drums. There wasn't a drum machine. It wasn't a loop. That was a real drummer in a good sounding room with probably no more than 2 to 4 microphones max. Listen to that shit. That'll blow your mind. That's really the proto hip hop sound right there. I mean, the beat, the phrasing, everything. That's really where it began. Well, there's tons of stuff like that, man. I love listening to stuff like that in music. Like today, I was listening to the from 1973, the first Montrose album. If you've never heard that album, man, what a fucking killer record that is. Fucking killer record. Long before fucking Van Hagar or I Can't Drive 55 or any of that stuff. Even before Van Halen was formed, 1973, Montrose. You had Ronnie Montrose and Bill Church, who had just played with Van Morrison. They played on the Tupelo Honey record, which is another great fucking record I love. But Ronnie Montrose and Bill Church came out of that band and formed a new band, a rock band with a new unknown singer at that time named Sam Hagar. And they were going to be. They were really poisoning themselves. They sound like a mix between Led Zeppelin and Bad Company, really. And they had a second record. It was complete dog shit. And then they kicked Sammy Hagar out, and then they broke up, and then you know what happened after that. But that first Montrose album, the self-titled Montrose album, if you can get that on vinyl, you got a good turntable to listen to through. But even if you just listen to it on MP3, it's fucking fantastic. It's like I call it. I'll tell you what I call it: Kentucky Fried Zeppelin. That's what I call it. That's what that first Montrose record. But it's great. It's killer. If you like Zeppelin, you like. But you can hear that album coming out in 1973, and think about what was out on the charts in 1973. Listen to that production. Ted Templeman produced that record. He would also go on to produce, of course, all of the legendary Van Halen albums. There's one song on there too. Bad Motor Scooter. It's a badass song. There's a lot. Every song on that album's great. Bad Motor Scooter, Rock Candy. Listen to those Bonham drums in the intro to Rock Candy. That's killer. But Bad Motor Scooter. I mean, you listen to that and you instantly go, oh shit. So that's where Motley Crue stole that fucking Kickstart My Heart intro from that. 1973 Montrose, they did it first. So that's just one example. I mean, when you listen to that album, it sounds cliched now, but because you realize how many fucking bands, especially later 70s bands and a lot of the 80s hair bands, completely ripped off everything from Montrose. That thing's it's like a blueprint record for everything that came after it, and a lot of people, man, just flat don't know about it. So I love sleeper shit like that, you know. I like stuff that's great that people have slept on, like Budgie. I fucking love Budgie. What? Hey, I'm curious. I know a little bit about this. I don't know why why does everybody from England or UK, and I think people from Australia too, y'all are basically Brits anyway. You're a fucking penal colony. Why do y'all hate the Welsh so much? What's up with that? I heard it goes back to some ancient shit that doesn't even fucking matter, and goes back to some shit hundreds of years ago or something. Somebody wrote a couple months ago, wrote me a fucking email, and I think they were from Australia. They were just bagging on every single band that ever come out of fucking Wales, but Budgie though. Budgie's been slept on. Budgie was the fucking Welsh version of Rush. They really were. They were kind of like the Welsh version of Rush. What's that album? I think that came out in 73 too. Never Turn Your Back on a Friend. It's a killer record. But go watch the video for Bread Fan, which is a song that later was covered and popularized by Metallica. But listen to, that song's great. It's great. But look at this guy singing, right? He's playing bass and singing just like Geddy Lee. Kind of looks like Geddy Lee from Rush a little bit. But dude, he's an even nerdier, more sea hag, just ugly motherfucker version of Geddy Lee. Now, a lot of people think Geddy Lee's ugly and shit, but dude, where'd you see this guy? I think they let Geddy Lee kind of slide through the cracks because Rush, had enough going on with everything else with the drums and the songwriting and the time signatures, everything. They gave him a pass. They were going to let this guy pass. I ain't going to let this guy pass. This guy from Budgie. Woo, son. I remember that in the 90s. So like that happened. I remember when Weezer came out in the 90s when their first album came out. And I was in my first band around that time. And I'll never forget when Weezer first came out. The first time I heard them, and I heard their record or whatever, I remember being at band practice that day, standing in front. It's hilarious. This is so hilarious in hindsight. But I just remember they standing there like with the band going, boys, we got it made. We got it made, boys. There's no fucking way we're not going to get signed now. I really seriously, I was like, we got close, but didn't happen. But when Weezer came, I was like, dude, we're getting signed. These guys are way uglier, way nerdier than we are. We write way better songs than they do. This is it. I was really ecstatic. I was like, yeah, it's going down now. So, no, I remember like a year or so after Weezer came out, this band called Hum, H-U-M came out. They had that song. It was called Stars. I think I saw it on Beavis and Butthead. She's out back counting stars, and it's just like this real heavy, distorted power chord they come down on. And I remember seeing the video. It was like 95 on like 120 minutes on MTV and seeing these guys and going, oh man, oh shit, these guys this is the Budgie of alternative rock. Hum is the Budgie. Just when you thought they couldn't find some bigger, uglier nerds than Weezer, oh no, they found them. Hum. I'll never forget seeing those. Again, I was like, boys, this is it. Every week when some band would come out, I mean, not that my band was like, we were the same as everybody else at that time. Not like we were playing really sophisticated music either. Not any more sophisticated than anything like those bands were playing back then. Weezer or Green Day or any of that stuff, or Nirvana or anything. But still, it was just like every time one of these, because everybody was getting signed back then. I mean, I remember here in Dallas, there was a feeding frenzy even going on here too. There were, you wouldn't believe how quickly there was guys that you saw that had long hair, were playing in metal bands last week. All of a sudden their hair's cut off. And you see them at some club you would have never saw them at 2 weeks previously. That's when you started to know shit was going on. Yeah, but no, I got a lot of musical knowledge. I'm just as much a student of music and everything else. Plus, I'm a musician myself, and I play, and I've been around, had experiences with people within the industry, had known people that have gotten signed, and experienced that, and seen that whole thing going down. So yeah, I've got a lot of knowledge, experience on that. It's interesting. I don't know what made me think of this. I guess it's because I've heard a lot of people talking about this, but here's one of the interesting things in the industry that a lot of people don't know unless you're on the inside. The phrase or the term, whatever you want to call it, farewell tour. Did you know that's actually code for we're bankrupt? A lot of people don't know that. Anytime you're hearing about a band going on a farewell tour, listen, if bands break up, they break up. Okay? Point fucking blank. There ain't no hugging and kissing and, well, let's do one last tour for the fans. No. When a band breaks up and they can't be around, either they replace the person that are leaving or they completely break up and split up. No band in the history of music breaks up and then goes, well, let's do one last run for the fans. No. That's all bullshit. That's all PR. A farewell. Anytime you hear a band, no matter what level it is, it says they're going on a farewell tour. It's because financially they are bankrupt and they have no longer have any money to even keep the lights on. That's what the farewell tour means. That's why The Who did their first farewell tour in like 1982 or 1983. They've been on a farewell tour for 35 fucking years. But that's initially that it was that. When they initially went on that first farewell tour, it's because they had, they'd lost Keith Moon. They got some replacement drummers. They kept making some records. They weren't doing the business they were doing anymore. And at that time, they weren't seen as like they are now as a legacy act and playing catalog. They were basically at that point seen as a washed up band. So that's why they did the farewell tour thing. But it was such a success, and they had success with solo outings that they've kept it going. I talked about Kiss the other night. Kiss is doing what they're calling now the End of the Road tour. And if you read any of the press and any of the write-ups, all the press and all the write-ups say this is their farewell tour and they're breaking up. Well, number one, they've never said that. This is bullshit. I personally, I wouldn't go see that fake fucking version of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey they call Kiss these days. I saw the original four members on the fucking original reunion tour, and they put the makeup on back in 96. I don't need to see nothing else. That's it for me. I was done after that, never saw them again. That's good enough. It was great. I loved it. I got to see all four original members in makeup, did all the prime shit. It was boss. That was enough for me. But they did a farewell tour in the early 2000s and then came back with different personnel a year or two later. Now, that was a business move, too. That's what they do. Kiss has done this several times. If you think that again, none of the stuff they've put out themselves about this, what they've called the End of the Road tour, they have not one single person in that group has said this is the end of Kiss, we're breaking up, and that's it. They should simply said they're not going to tour anymore. Both Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons have been on the record multiple times saying Kiss is never going to break up. It's never going to die. They've openly both said that they are going to have replacement members even for them, and that Kiss will go on basically as a tribute act with even themselves being replaceable in the band. So even though the media on this tour has touted as, oh, this is their farewell tour, oh, they're breaking up, the band has never said, you think these motherfuckers aren't going to milk this? They've already said this fucking End of the Road tour is going to go till 2021. Look at what the business they were doing before this. The last 3 or 4 tours Kiss did, they had to do package tours with another band. They could not headline arenas and even smaller sheds and stuff anymore by themselves. They did a tour with Motley Crue. They did a tour with Def Leppard. They did a tour with whoever else. Cheap Trick. They could only do these package tours. And the last couple of tours they did, they were doing small secondary and third tertiary markets and not even filling up the places. That's what this End of the Road thing is. They're milking this shit for fucking every fucking penny they can get out of it, making people believe and allowing them, not correcting the media, and allowing the media to spin the yarn for them, even though they themselves have never said, we're breaking up, this is the end of the band. They've simply said, this is the end of the touring life of the band. You know what they're going to do. I was in Vegas a few years ago when I had to go through there shooting for Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 2. And I saw the writing on the wall even then. Because Guns N' Roses was there, I think, doing like a residency or something. That's where it's going, man. All these old dinosaur rock bands and even bands from the 90s and the acts that didn't die and are left over. I mean, if you're in anywhere near my age, I'm 42, listen, the next 10 to 20 years, less than that, you're going to start seeing, because all the old Vegas people now have either died off or dying off even more. And they got to have something to keep Vegas going. Now it's like, Donnie and Marie or shit like that, old 70s and 80s acts are now on there. But now that's what it's going to start morphing into. I saw the writing on the wall many years ago. Kiss had their own mini golf thing there that we went and checked out while they were there. I mean, that's what they're going to do. They're going to build a venue, and it's smart. I mean, I see the point. A lot of bands, I think, are going to start doing that. You build a venue that's just around that specific band, like the Kiss venue, and then you don't have to travel anywhere, be on the road, and the band's to sleep in their own beds at night. That's where it's going. They're not going to tell anybody that, because if they tell everybody that's where it's going to go, then they're not going to sell fucking tickets on their goddamn second whatever farewell tour. They haven't themselves called it a farewell tour. They just said it's called the End of the Road tour, meaning they're the end to touring band. They've never said their band is breaking up. They've never said they're not going to play with each other ever again. Never once have they said that in any of the stuff since they announced this tour last year. But they don't have to, because the media says, just like with everything else, they make out what they want it to be. They run with it, and then when it's over, they're going to say, "Oh, well, now we're not end of the road, man." Yeah, it's the end of the road, but the end of the road leads to Las Vegas, where now you can come see Kiss 7 nights a week in the new Kiss Resort Casino in Las Vegas. By the way, I played a Kiss slot machine while I was there too, and I won like $800 off that motherfucker. So, hey, Gene and Paul, hey, good on you there with that. I played it for like 5 minutes and won $800. I said, all right, I'm done. That was it for me. It's like, wow, 5 minutes in the casino, won $800. I'm good. I'm ready to go back to the hotel and crash now. Back on the road. Fuck. But yeah, you anytime you hear the farewell card being played, that means that financially, as a business, they're going under. Another one of my favorite bands, another sleeper bands. After I get out the films, Spellcasters 2 and 3, and I'll have more time to dedicate to doing just shows and stuff, I'll be doing more music-based shows. I plan on doing like some record reviews and album of the week type stuff, profiles on different bands I think people should check out. One of those for me that I would just love to make a biopic on is Thin Lizzy, one of my favorite all-time bands. I remember when I was a teenager, I was 15 or 16, and my uncle got me into them, because I was heavy into like Kiss and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Queen and stuff at that time. And he had seen Thin Lizzy open up for Queen in Dallas, and he had the ticket stub, and I remember it was like $4 to get in or something. I was looking at it going, whoa, like a 15 or 16-year-old kid. I was like freaking out. And my uncle was like, yeah, man, you gotta get into Thin Lizzy, because I was just starting to play bass and stuff at that time before I played guitar, drums, and all the stuff I play now. Well, I mean, what can I say? They're just a fantastic fucking band. I love Thin Lizzy. I love Thin Lizzy so much. Just such a unique band, and a band that has so many great albums people slept on. I mean, for the most part, in America, people know The Boys Are Back in Town. Maybe they know Cowboy Song, but past that, really nothing. But outside of America, just like, a lot of bands like Oasis and other bands, Queen to a large extent was that way for a long time. They had songs were known up to a certain point, and then in America, they didn't know. Meanwhile, they had worldwide hits everywhere else. Thin Lizzy was like that. It had a great run of records, man. That run of records from Fighting, Jailbreak, Johnny the Fox, Bad Reputation, Live and Dangerous, and Black Rose. That's like all the essential. But just such a unique. Phil Lynott was just, his mother should be given some kind of award. She's still alive, too. She's in her 80s or 90s, but she's still alive. But, man, can you imagine being a white Irish woman in 1949, 1950? He was born in 49, so 48, 49. Can you imagine just right after World War II being a white woman from Ireland in England and having a half black child with in that time? I mean, it's an incredible story. I mean, they wouldn't let his mother live anywhere. His mother went to this dance in everybody was dancing with each other, and she saw this black man, and no one would dance with him, so she decided to be nice and go dance with this black man, and everybody was like, giving him dirty looks and everything. Well, she was walking home, and as she was walking home, there were some people there that saw her dancing with the black man, so they tried to beat her up and jump her. And he happened to be walking the same way the black man that she was dancing with, and saw it and saved her life, kicked all their asses. And I think he was, I don't know, he was a vagabond or something. I don't know. Anyway, she ended up getting pregnant and going back to Ireland, and she had the child, and she raised that child to be the mighty fucking Phil Lynott. And just because of that, being Irish and being black, and there being basically no black people in Ireland, especially then, and to look at how he was raised, and he was really staunchly 100% Irish. He didn't see himself as black or anything. He just saw himself as an Irishman first. Man, there just aren't very many voices in music, and I struggle. I mean, I one thing I listen for, especially in new stuff, I try to find somebody that has one of those voices that can just fucking stick you in the gut like a knife, man. And anymore, there just aren't. All the ones that had those aren't with us anymore. It's really sad, But that's what I look for, man. I think it's great when you have a band like Rush or somebody, who can play a lot of notes and they're very precise. I mean, that's great, but you got to have songs. I really like, that heartfelt, real, stick you in the gut emotion over, musical precision and that kind of thing. But god damn, that Phil Lynott, man, he had one of those voices. It really, it just sticks me in the gut. One of my favorite voices, I think, ever. When he sings something and you listen to those lyrics, you feel it. You just really feel it. Listen to the song, I think it's the last song on Bad Reputation. They had that string of records, that 3 string of records that were produced by Tony Visconti, who produced a lot of David Bowie stuff, and he later produced the last Bowie stuff, the Black Star stuff. Tony Visconti produced like 3 records for Thin Lizzy. He produced Bad Reputation first, Live and Dangerous, and then Black Rose. And I think the last song on Bad Reputation is Dear Lord. That song, wow. Backing vocals by, I think it's the chick Paul McCartney was with before the real Paul McCartney was with, before he died / became another person, and they replaced him with Fall. Mary something. Yeah, she sings on that Thin Lizzy track. But yeah, just that voice, man. And fucking Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they're such a fucking joke anyway. And they put people in there that fucking before other people that are more deserving and people that shouldn't have gone in there. But man, the one way they're a joke, they've never even considered, never even had Thin Lizzy on the fucking ballot ever. And it's a travesty. I'm telling you, man, if I had a movie production company that I could take a script and something to for a biopic on fucking Phil Lynott, dude, I'm telling you, it would smash. It would smash. But, and I heard people, I gave my review on that Bohemian Rhapsody movie. Everybody knows I'm a massive Queen fan, but that movie was garbage. Total crap. And I saw some of the reviews that were critical of it, but weren't even critical of it in the right way. You know what I mean? Like the things that they should have been critical about, they didn't even bring up, and yet said things like, oh, well, the story is a cliched rock and roll story. Well, yeah, it's easy to say that in 2008, 2019, whatever. And if I was to make, say, a Phil Lynott Thin Lizzy movie biopic, if you saw that laid out and saw that story said, you would very easily say, well, that's just a cliched rock and roll story. Yeah, maybe, but at the time it wasn't. You got to remember, these guys were blazing the trail for this stuff. This was all new. That's why all these stories of these different groups are the same. And it's exactly why what I talked about the other night happens. Where it's easy to conceal a popular hip hop guy like Biggie or Tupac getting shot and never finding the murderers, and it being a mystery 20-something years later, that's easy to do because it's easy for you to dismiss that to the general public. Well, that's just those gangster rappers. They just shoot and kill each other anyway. What do you expect? And they write it off, and that's how these motherfuckers get away with murder. Same thing in the rock community. Well, those rock guys, man, they're all sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and they're strung out. All of them are drug heads. Well, of course he OD'd, or of course he killed himself. What do you expect? You see what I'm saying? This is how they get away. But also, that's how they try to dismiss, real important stories. But the reason I brought up the Thin Lizzy thing was because that's what happened with it. And that's a key component. I mean, listen, they were real strung out on drugs. Philip Lynott was doing everything under the sun. I mean, usually you got a guy that's fucking, he's an alcoholic or drinks too much, or you got a guy that's a fucking pill head and he takes pills all the time, or you got a guy that's fucking into the fucking Bolivian marching powder and he's fucking coked out all the time, or you got a guy that's a heroin guy like Keith Richards and, he drinks and does heroin all the time. Very rarely do you have somebody who's all of those in one guy. And that's what Phil Lynott was. He was on all of it, all the time. And in fact, Bowie's producer, Visconti, that's why he only did those. Well, I say 3 albums. It's 3 albums. Technically, it's 2 albums and a live album. But that's why after Black Rose, he didn't do any more records, because he said, Phil's going to kill himself. I'm not going to sit here and watch Phil. I'm not going to sit here and watch him destroy himself and destroy his life. And I'm just not going to do it. So that's why he didn't produce any records for them. And then they put out a couple of more records after that. They don't really have a bad record, except their early period is really folky. It has nothing to do with the later twin guitar attack stuff. Nightlife is good. Vagabonds of the Western World is good. Really, if you want to start with Lizzy, you need to start with Fighting and go from there. Their last album, Thunder and Lightning, was pretty much heavy metal. I mean, they had John Sykes playing guitar on there. Tigers of Pantang and Blue Murder he was in. And so he was doing all kinds of Eddie Van Halen's that Finger Tap. I mean, they were pretty much heavy metal on the last album. But the sales were long gone. What money they would make would basically go to feed Phil and Scott Gorham, one of the guitar players. They were both heroin addicts. So, whatever money they were making was going to feed drug habits. So eventually they were basically bankrupt as a band. And that's when they did, Thin Lizzy did a farewell tour. There's lots of footage and clips from it. And then Phil went on, did solo stuff after that, and then passed away a few years after that. But it was all because of this, because he invested so much. Thin Lizzy had become his life so much that when it had to end, not because the band members had nothing to do with the band members not getting along. They were all still wanting to play together, but the business end of it, they had to file bankruptcy. So that, because of that, that's what sent Phil farther down his spiral, and eventually led to him having organ failure and dying and stuff. But yeah, man, I've always been into those sort of sleeper bands and the under the radar bands, and they're getting few and far between. I mean, I can remember when Rush was one of those bands. I mean, I can remember being a Rush fan in the early 90s, man. It was about the most uncool thing that you could be. I mean, literally, you could tell people you like New Kids on the Block, and they wouldn't, or MC Hammer, and they wouldn't think you were as weird as they did if you told them you were a Rush fan. It was like that. And now they've gotten their due, and they're respected and considered amongst all the other bands like Led Zeppelin and the rest. But it wasn't always that way. And it took a long time for them to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. But anyway, there you go. Yeah, I like I said, I got so much music knowledge, I could talk about that shit all the time. But it's one of those things where it's definitely come in handy, especially when cross-referencing that knowledge and that stuff with the work I do on these films and with the spellcaster stuff and the rest of it. So anyway, thanks to all the people out there who responded and said they liked me talking about that. And the Tupac stuff. Yeah, anytime I get into the Tupac stuff and that stuff, it's something I know a lot about. I've done shows on it in the past, but it's not something I've done a whole lot of talking about. But yeah, I know a lot about it. I definitely know enough to tell you that what you've been told on even the so-called theories and conspiracy theories have all been lies. Every one of them. Anything that tells you, and like I said the other night, anything that tells you in the end that it was Orlando Anderson that had something to do with it is absolutely shill, lying to you, trying to get you to look the other way. Somebody was asking me about these recent suicides right on top of each other, what I thought about it. I believe you had, I think it was 2 girls and 1 gentleman, all 3 in the past week, who were survivors of mass shootings. I think you had 2 of them were from the Parkland shooting. 2 girls that survived the Parkland shooting committed suicide. And then the father of one of the Sandy Hook victims apparently committed suicide. And, another thing happened too. Remember there was that shooting at that country bar or something in California a few months back? Remember that? And some of the people there was weird, shady stuff surrounding that. And some of the people, a couple of people got shot or killed in that, were actually survivors from the Las Vegas shooting. Something, I knew immediately something was weird with that. Something's weird with this too. But I got to be 100% honest with you. If I'm going to continue to put my shows on YouTube and not just put them in my archives where you have to get a membership to get them, that's not something I can really fully comment on right now. Because they're taking down people for saying a lot less. I will say this, though. This is the best way I can say it. If, I'm just saying hypothetically here, if you were of the opinion, hypothetically, that in some, maybe not all, but definitely in some of these mass shooting situations, hypothetically speaking, if you were of the belief that in some cases there have been so-called crisis actors used, and believe it or not, there is evidence to support that. I'm not saying the shootings didn't happen like Alex Jones and others have said. I think they did happen, but there actually is evidence, if you look into it, that there were crisis actors used. Now, if you were somebody who was hypothetically someone who believed in that, then you would probably most likely draw the conclusion that the so-called suicides weren't really suicides at all and were possibly staged deaths of these actors who are going to now go on and be in witness protection programs and other things like that. I'm just saying hypothetically. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying people have asked me about these suicides, and I'm saying hypothetically to you now, if you were somebody that believed that they used crisis actors in these situations, then I would say most likely you would probably believe also that, the chances of these suicides happening right on top, the chance of those people getting shot at that country music club that were also at the Las Vegas shooting thing, none of this is coincidence. None of this is chance. The likelihood of these people, being in that situation again, it's astronomical when you start looking at statistics. But yeah, all this stuff happened. I agree. All this stuff happening all at once. Like I talked about the other day, the Jones and Rogan being on Jones' show together and fist bumping and, bro love time happening right as the Mueller probe thing comes to an end, right as the Smollett thing is after he's let off. Yeah, none of this is happening all at once by accident at all. But I was talking about the Tupac stuff the other night, and I've talked about this before. And I've talked about this in the past, but I meant to mention it again. Yet there's, like I said, I really have started to come around. I'm kind of on the fence now. I think there's a good chance that Kurt Cobain's death was faked, and I think there's a very good chance, and hell, even Suge Knight himself has said it multiple times on camera and alluded to it point blank that Tupac's death was fake. The big thing for me, if you're talking about, crisis actors and stuff, was that Paige Hemmis chick. Paigehemmis. Paige Hemmis. Look her up. Look up that clip, man. There's a clip from the night Tupac was shot. When there's this blonde girl that says her story was she was on vacation in Vegas with her friends. They heard the gunshots. And then a medical helicopter came and took Tupac away. Excuse me? There's another clip where another paramedic guy says something about a helicopter. That's not the official story. The official story was he was taken in an ambulance and then taken to the hospital, and the cop came, and the last words he said before he passed out was "fuck you" to the cop and all that. See, you really want to have your mind blown on the whole Tupac thing? I'll tell you how to do it. And it's not going to be, unfortunately for you, it's not going to be something you can just go watch a YouTube video on. This is going to require some actual effort on your part, but not a lot. One Google search is all it's going to take. It's just going to take some time to go through for you to go through and read it all. But if you really want to have some eye-opening shit about the Tupac thing, go pull the actual police records. You can find them online, readily available. Go pull the police reports and the reports taken from witnesses and all that stuff. Go read the official report from the night of the shooting, and then go listen to watch any of the TV reenactments or the movies or anything they've done, and you will be shocked at how wildly different they are and how they do not match up at all. The official story that's on paper on the police reports, ladies and gentlemen, does not match the narratives we've been sold in any of the TV shows, the reenactments, the movies, people doing YouTube videos on it. It's astounding. It's like you're reading two different stories. I've talked about this in the past, too. You know who else nobody ever brings up that was there? And they never bring it up? MC Hammer. Hammer was in a green Hummer in the motorcade when Tupac was shot. He was like 2 cars back, and nobody ever talks about it, but it's in the police reports. I think I may have heard him one time in an interview, one place somewhere. Either he brought it up or somebody brought it up and said something about you were there the night Tupac, and he said, yeah, and they moved on to something else or something. People laugh at Hammer. I'm telling you right now, people because he think he was corny and can't touch this. Let me tell you something. Hammer is a straight fucking G, dude. You can laugh. Every time I tell people this, they laugh at me like I'm trying to be funny, and I'm not trying to be funny. He's a stone cold murderer, dude. And his fucking cover is that he's this, cheesy dancing motherfucker. That's a fucking ruse, just like some of these guys that act like they're big old gangster motherfuckers. And meanwhile, they're, don't kill me, dude. Don't But in public, they're, peacocking out and acting like they're big shits in Turdville. Fucking Hammer's the other way. Hammer is a fucking, he's run with fucking Crips. He's a real gangster. He is a for real gangster. Most people don't know that. I can't tell you how many times I've been laughed at telling people that, because that's how much people allow the perception of what the powers that be and what the industry itself wants you to perceive, that's how far the perception becomes reality for people, because the perception is that Hammer's, Mr. Smiling, Dancing motherfucker. People forget that he put out a hardcore gangster rap album. People forget he was on Death Row Records. But even before all of that, he was a hardcore gangbanger, dude. I know it sounds hilarious. People are like, oh, man, I believe in Hammer's a gangbanger. Come on now. I'm serious. You can confirm this. I'm telling you, he knows something. He's another motherfucker that knows some shit about the Tupac thing and ain't talking. But there's a whole, when you watch the narrative, it's like they left the hotel or whatever after the fight. They left the MGM Grand. They made the No. Before that, they went to Suge Knight's house. Okay? This is key. This is in the police report. They went to Suge Knight's house. This is after they left the hotel, before they went back out on the strip when the shooting supposedly happened. The motorcade that had MC Hammer and all their other guys in cars, okay, they went to Suge's house. Suge lived in a gated house. They all followed over to Suge's house. Suge's BMW car went in. None of the other cars were allowed to come in behind the fence. Tupac was in the car with him. They went inside his house. They were in there for about 30 minutes. And some people believe this is when the switch occurred. That at this point, they switched out the real Tupac for either a body double, a clone, a dummy. And that whole thing was staged with squibs, like fake blood, just like that. I mean, look, think about it. Pac knew how to do that stuff. He had been on the set of multiple movies. He had learned and been behind the scenes and seen how they done. Think about all those great movies he was in. At that point, he had been behind the scenes and seen how they fake stuff for the movies where somebody's getting shot and make it look real. But that all gets left out of the narrative. They make it seem like the fight happened in the casino. They all bailed. They tore ass out. And right after that, boom, you get shot. And that's the end. And that's not how. There was a lot more in between there that gets left out of the story. The other key thing in that is if you look at that picture, everybody knows that picture, that famous supposed last picture that supposedly was taken by a guy who pulled up next to their car who wasn't, a paparazzi or anything like that. Supposedly just a regular guy who just happened to have a professional camera with a lens. I mean, it wasn't like these days where everybody's got a camera and you got one on your phone. This guy, we're supposed to believe this guy had a professional camera with a lens and everything ready to go and just happened to see Tupac and Biggie, or Tupac and Suge at the red light, and pulled up that camera in time to take that perfect picture where Suge's looking forward driving the car and Tupac's looking over at him, the last picture, right? Okay, first of all, if you can suspend disbelief long enough to that, because look at that picture. That's a professionally framed up picture taken with a professional camera. Even the guy that took it admits that. But here's the thing. Here's the kicker, though. Look real close at that picture. Bring it up right now. Look at it. Look real close at that picture, folks. There's one very key thing missing in that picture. Look closely now. Look over towards Suge. Look over near the steering wheel. You're getting warmer. Isn't there? Look close. You can even zoom in and look at it. Don't you know something missing there? There ain't no keys in that fucking car. There ain't no keys in that fucking car. That's a staged, still photo that they did sitting still somewhere to further sell that narrative that they were trying to concoct. This was a fake death. Back to Paige Hemmis. Go pull up the clip of her. It's interesting. She talks about seeing, the helicopter come and pick Tupac up and take him away, which goes against the official narrative that he was taken in an ambulance to the hospital and what other eyewitnesses saw. Now, fast forward 20 years into the future, and now Paige Himmis is a TV star, and she's on TV at ABC for the show Extreme Makeover Home Edition. She was a crisis actor. There's even photos of her. There's a famous photo of Pac walking through the club, and you can see her trailing behind him because that's the alleged story, is that because he was with wasn't Rashida Jones? It was one of the Jones, Quincy Jones's daughters. Tupac was with her, but secretly he was having an affair with this white girl, Paige Himmis. There's a picture of her trailing behind Pac at a club, and then later she appears. She just happens to appear as a tourist bystander that just happened to be there at the exact moment when Tupac. Yes, we heard the gunshots, and then the medical helicopter came and took him away. Wrong. The stage, the photo, without the keys in the ignition, Paige Himmis talking about that. This is all clear indicators, ladies and gentlemen, that Tupac's death was 100% faked. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Beyond any shadow of a doubt. Not to mention that the so-called fake autopsy photo that came out didn't have any of his tattoos in the right spot. This is staged. But anyway, the Paige Himmis thing, to me, is the smoking gun there. Seeing pictures of her, the stories supposedly her and Pac were together secretly. And then she just happens to go on, this nobody who was just a tourist, right? I mean, again, think about the statistical odds of that. She just happens to be just a random tourist in Vegas, happens to be there at the moment Tupac gets shot, and then she just happens to go on to be on a big popular TV show on ABC Network. Come on. Thanks for playing. Not buying that shit for a second. Somebody else, one of our listeners, wanted to hear me talk about Mormonism. You know what, man? I've been doing this for a long time. And I've talked about those. I've talked about Mormons a ton in the past. I've beaten that dead horse as far as it can be beat, to be honest with you. Go get my film, Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1. Very interesting stuff on the Mormons in there. It's an interesting subject. I'll do my best to give you what I can. But please, nobody email me again in 6 months to tell me to talk about Mormon shit again, because I'm done. Okay, I've beat this dead horse as many times as I can. Listen, if you really want to, if you really want to know about Mormonism stuff, you got to go back to even before Mormons were a thing. Because there was this very interesting ordeal that took place that actually led to the formation of the Mormon Church. And by the way, I talked about Charles Taze Russell the other night and talked about his bloodline. This is a fact. Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, founding fathers of Mormonism, both of these guys come from the same bloodline as Charles Taze Russell. That's one thing you got to understand. So, yet again, we're talking about another religion that is founded by members of these elite bloodlines. But I got to tell you, man, Mormonism, specifically since I did my work in my films on the Lost Secrets of Ancient America, I was already interested in it and had researched it a lot before, but it was one of those things like I talked about the other night where you're researching something completely different. You're on a different, complete research path, and then other stuff comes in to the picture that start to prove things you weren't even trying to prove. And I got to tell you, as far as religions go, I think Mormons get... I mean, they're probably... I mean, let's be honest. They're probably... I mean, second probably only to the Catholic Church now being called pedophiles, which they weren't always called that. You know, this is... Again, you got to remember, this is more recent revelations and stuff. But for many years, Mormons have been the butts of all kinds of jokes. I mean, they're made fun of relentlessly. Even the South Park guys have roasted them. Mormons are constantly shit on, put down, and I always wondered why that was, because I've known some Mormons in my time, and I'll be honest with you, every person I've ever met, this is so weird. Every single person I've ever met that's been a Mormon have been good people. They really have. They've been good people. They're different. They're really different than Christians or Southern Baptists or, Presbyterians or Pentecosts or any of that. They're real different in that they're real strict into their thing, kind of like Pentecost. They follow their shit. They believe in it. They follow it. But I got to say, they are the least. They don't try to convert you by any means. That's what I find interesting. They don't want to recruit you, number one. And they're really, really the most least judgmental of religious people that I've ever met. It's really crazy. But, here's the thing about Mormonism. It was 100%, beyond any shadow of a doubt. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not assumption. This is verifiable, proven historical fact. Mormonism was created and started 100% as a front to practice Freemasonry at a time in America when, believe it or not, Freemasonry in this country was banned. Did you know that? A lot of people don't know that. Because they've listen, I've exposed Freemasonry from the beginning. I've been researching Freemasonry probably as long as anybody. One of the first things I started researching. And there is a whole lot of disinformation, bad information, and flat out lies about Masons. There really is. And guess what? A lot of it is largely been put out by Freemasons. The shit with them being, satanic blood drinkers and all this, which is total bullshit. That shit wasn't put out by people who were anti-Freemasons. That shit was put out by people who actually were Masons. Because they were trying to keep riffraff and white trash and, frankly, colored people out of their mix. And that's how they did it. And that shit largely exists to this day. And I'm no Masonic apologist. I have exposed them motherfuckers. But let's be fair. You should expose things that need to be exposed, but resorting to making up stuff and believing things that frankly aren't even true, I can't be a part of that. Never have been a part of it. But it's a stone cold fact that the influence of Freemasonry on the Mormon religion still exists and is still there today. And they even have degree levels within the church that you go up that are just like what they have in Scientology or Freemasonry. But again, to really talk about Mormonism, you got to go back before Mormonism was created, and you got to talk about William Morgan. This is a great story. I'd love to make a movie about this one day too. Not a documentary, like a movie. The Morgan Affair. So this guy, William Morgan, was kind of like the first whistleblower truther of his time. And he supposedly went up to Canada, and I think he got initiated into the York Rite. There were several lodges he supposedly went to and became a master mason, and then got in other lodges. And, well, here, I'll just read some stuff from the internet. So I tried to remember it off the top of my head. Morgan claimed to have been made a Master Mason while he was living in Canada and appears to have briefly attended a lodge in Rochester. In 1825, Morgan received the Royal Arch degree at Leroy's Western Star, chapter number 33, of course, having declared under oath that he had previously received 6 degrees that preceded it. It has never been established that if he actually received these degrees, and if so, from which lodge. Morgan then attempted unsuccessfully to help establish or visit lodges and chapters in that Batavia, but it was denied participation by members who disapproved of his character and even questioned his claims to Masonic membership. And I have his book. You can actually find it. I think he even talks about Illuminati and stuff in there. It's called Illustrations of Masonry. So after they wouldn't let him in these lodges, he said, fuck y'all. I'm blowing y'all's motherfucking doors off, Jack. So he went and wrote this book, Illustrations of Masonry. Got a huge advance from a publisher. And, yeah, he basically wrote the first book that exposed the handshakes, the rituals. He blew the doors off Freemasonry, ladies and gentlemen, in a way. I mean, he was a trailblazer as far as that goes. No one knew anything about the rituals, the codes, the handshakes. Nobody knew that until Morgan came along. Now, what's interesting is that, just as I read there, they'll claim, oh, well, you know, it's never been confirmed that he went to this lodge or that he received these degrees, right? They say that on one hand. Yet, when he wrote this book, it set the Masonic community on fucking fire. So, you know, they can sit here and say, oh, he didn't, there's no verification, he went and got this degree, that degree. Well, he got enough. And there's a lot of conflicting stories on what happened to him. But a lot of conflicting stories. I mean, it says here, I'll just read you some of this. Since Masons placed their hands on a Bible and promised not to reveal the passwords and grips of the degrees, several members of the Batavia Lodge published an advertisement denouncing Morgan for breaking his word by authoring the book. See? Y'all are saying, well, you wouldn't let him into the lodge because you couldn't prove whether he was a Mason or not. Yet you were sure that he took the oath? You were sure that he did that enough to... See, it doesn't make sense. That's bullshit. Oh, we're not going to let you in this lodge because we can't prove you're an actual Mason, but if you put your hand on the Bible and promised not to reveal the passwords, grips, and degrees, then that means that you broke your vow to Masonry. An attempt was also made to set fire to Miller's newspaper office and print shop on September 11th, 1826. That's interesting because there's a September. I talked about that not too long ago. The first 9/11. There was a 9/11 connected to the Mormons, too. They killed a bunch of fucking innocent people and blamed it on Native Americans. Got away with it. And that happened on September 11th. Here's another September 11th for you. 1826, Morgan was arrested on trumped-up charges for supposed non-payment of a loan and allegedly stealing a shirt and tie. According to the laws of the time, he could be held in debtor's prison until restitution was made, which would have made it more difficult to publish his book. Morgan was jailed in Canandaigua, and when Miller learned of this, he went to jail to pay the debt and secure Morgan's release. Morgan was released and re-arrested and charged with supposedly failing to pay a $2 tavern bill. While the jailer was away, a group of men convinced his wife to release Morgan. They walked to a waiting carriage, which arrived 2 days later at Fort Niagara. Shortly afterwards, Morgan disappeared. Now, this is where stuff starts coming into play, because there are people, there's all kinds of conflicting stories. In October 1827, a badly decomposed body washed up on the shores of Lake Ontario. Many presumed it to be Morgan, and the body was buried as his. However, the wife of a missing Canadian named Timothy Munro positively identified the clothing on the body as that which had been worn by her husband at the time he disappeared. One group of Freemasons denied that Morgan was killed, saying that he had paid him $500 to leave the country. Morgan was reportedly seen later, including in other countries, but none of the reports were confirmed. Eventually, Eli Bruce of the sheriff of Niagara County and a Mason was removed from office and tried for his involvement in Morgan's disappearance. He served 28 months in prison after being convicted of conspiracy for his role in kidnapping Morgan and holding him against his will before his disappearance. 3 other Masons, Lowton Lawson, Nicholas Cheesebro, and Edward Sawyer, were convicted of taking part in the kidnapping and served sentences. Other Batavia Masons were tried and acquitted. Author Jasper Ridley suggests that Morgan was probably killed by local Masons, as well as other scenarios are highly improbable. Historian H. Paul Jeffers also considers this more credible explanation. C.T. Congdon, in Reminiscences of a Journalist, cites a third-hand account that Morgan was murdered by certain very zealous Freemasons and notes that the resultant anti-Mason sentiment caused many elections to go to non-Masons for a number of years afterwards. So that's what this caused. There actually, believe it or not, there was actually a movement in this country called the anti-Masonic movement after this. Because people started, when they heard that he disappeared, what does that do? That just made people go check out his book even more. So I've heard other stories that weren't even mentioned here. I heard that they cut his tongue out, is what I heard. I heard they cut his tongue out, destroyed his body, his remains were never found, and they gave the tongue to the wife. Now, for whatever reason, it doesn't say that here. But then I've also heard that he faked his own death, too. But regardless of all that, it actually did result, as it said there, in there being such a... And this carried through. I can remember, it's weird. I can remember like old folks when I was a kid, when they're like, oh, he's a Mason. They would say it in a way like, almost like you would say somebody's a movie star. Oh, he's a movie star. They would say it like that. And I always wondered why. And people always kind of considered, Mason shady and stuff like that. But yeah, for a period of time, there was completely an anti-Masonic movement in the United States. If, whereas before and as it is kind of now in some places still, especially in England, if you were in politics and you were a Freemason, it was like a fucking, it was like a backstage pass. It was like an all-access pass. But then it became, these guys that did that became Masons so they could get where they wanted to go in fucking politics. All of a sudden, after the Morgan thing happened, couldn't find themselves, couldn't get elected. Couldn't get fucking anything. Couldn't get elected dog catcher. What's interesting to me, and that I've never been able to really find information on, they certainly don't talk about it in any of the stuff that I'm reading from here about this whole thing, but they never really talk about what turned the tide. In the 1828 campaign, other Jackson rivals, including John Quincy Adams, joined in denouncing the Masons. In 1832, the Anti-Masonic Party fielded William Wirt as its presidential candidate and Amos Ellmaker as his running mate, and they received the 7 electoral votes from Vermont. By 1835, the party had become moribund everywhere but Pennsylvania, and other issues such as slavery became the focus of national attention. Oh, I see. Oh, man, that's what... Oh, you're kidding me, right? You're kidding me. Oh, shit. I can't believe I didn't know that. Oh, fuck. You're kidding me. Man, that makes so much sense. God, I can't believe I didn't know that. I've always wondered. See, you never see it explained. And they still didn't explain it here, but that one little sentence was enough to tell us what was going on there. God damn, I wondered what was up with that, because you never see that talked about. You can find stuff out the waz on fucking the Morgan thing and, you know, how maybe he died, maybe he didn't die, did he fake his death? You can find stuff on that. The anti-Masonic movement, you can find stuff on that. But you can't ever find anybody talking about or explaining what turned it around. Because obviously after that, we had a lot more Masons come in power, senators, congressmen. At some point, the tide turned and there wasn't the anti-Masonic thing anymore. Why? Well, they just told you right there. Other issues such as slavery became the focus of national attention. It's just like they do now. When something's starting to get traction and get attention, what do? Boom. Another mass shooting, another distraction, another thing to get you looking over here. Look at the monkey. Look at the silly monkey. Meanwhile, they're over here gangbanging away. Fuck, dude. They didn't give two shits about freeing the fucking slaves. I should have fucking known. They didn't give two shits about freeing slaves. They made it an issue because they wanted to fucking distract away from all the anti-Masonic stuff going on and bring slavery to the forefront to distract away from all the focus that was going on and all the negative attention that was happening in Freemasonry. All of a sudden, rightly so, whatever's going on with Freemasons doesn't seem as important when you've got the issue of whether or not people should own slaves or not coming to the forefront, right? What else is going to be more important than that? Man, that's crazy. I should have fucking known. Wow. No wonder they never fucking talk about that. I always wondered why. You know, they're happy to talk about what happened leading to the anti-Masonic movement. But they never talk about, what happened. Listen to this. In 1847, John Quincy Adams published a widely distributed book called Letters on the Masonic Institution that criticized the Masons as a secret society. In 1830, Morgan's widow, Lucinda Pendleton Morgan, married George W. Harris of Batavia, a silversmith who was 20 years older. After they moved to the Midwest, they became Mormons. By 1837, some historians believe that Lucinda Pendleton Morgan Harris had become one of the plural wives of Joseph Smith, founder of the Latter-day Saints movement. Fuck! Wow. She continued to live with her older husband, George Harris. After Smith was murdered in 1844, she was sealed to him for eternity in a rite of the church. Members of Freemasonry criticized the Mormons for their alleged adoption of Masonic rituals and regalia. This is what I was getting to. In 1841, the Mormons announced their vicarious baptism of William Morgan after his death. That's another thing they do, the baptisms of the dead. I read about that. They were doing baptisms I remember when I first started my radio show 12, 13 years ago, I remember hearing stories about Mormons were doing baptisms of the dead on dead Nazis. Baptizing them that's what they can do. They baptize people into Mormonism after death, even if they didn't want to be Mormons in life. This is a fact. This has been confirmed to me by people in the church. As one of the first under their new right to possibly offer people entrance into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints posthumously. Wow. That's crazy as fuck, dude. Okay, so I knew that the Morgan affair was what caused the anti-Masonic movement. It's what caused Masonry to go underground for a period of time. It's what caused the Mormon Church to be formed, and as I just read, use and adopt the Masonic rituals and regalia. But I had no idea that Morgan's widow, the guy that either was killed or faked his death, that wrote the book exposing Freemasonry, his widow went on to become one of Joseph Smith's wives? Holy shit, man. Now that I didn't know. I love this kind of shit. I love this. I love when I learn stuff that I didn't know while I'm talking to you live and telling you that's the best. That's the best shit. Man. Wow. And God damn, I'm getting my mind blown double here. Fuck. Yeah, I just had no wonder. I always wondered how that went down. How come it went from being, there being this big movement, anti-Freemasonry movement, that being the big talking point and being the big fucking public issue to, we need something else. Boom, let's start a group. God, it's just like they do today, isn't it? With all the social justice issues and, some of which are warranted, some of which aren't. Man, goddamn, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm going to have to go listen to that song Circumstances by Rush after this. Boy, I tell you what. Plus c'est le charme, plus c'est la même chose. The more that things change, the more they stay the same. Oh, my God. That's fucking incredible, man. Fuck it. Let's get some people over here to act like they don't like the owning slaves. And let's start a big slavery thing. We'll get everybody divided up over that. Divide and conquer. They'll forget about the... Wow. Shit on a shingle, man. That's fucking crazy. Oh, wow, they have a monument to him. Wow, crazy. So, if you haven't seen Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1, you should go to the download shop and get a download of that and watch it. I got to tell you, man, when I was doing my research into that, I started coming across stuff, and it made me realize, because I wasn't coming from the standpoint of, I started finding all this stuff that lined up 100% with what I had read the beliefs of the Mormons are. Because I was researching the ancient giants, and I was, I kept coming up with conflicting information. I went all the way out to Lovelock Cave, Nevada, and shot footage out there. I mean, I've done my work on this stuff, particularly how it plays in with my work in my research into the rock wall, which, of course, Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 is about as well. But I started, because, you hear stuff, reports about these dark-haired giants, and you hear reports about red-haired giants. And there was lots of arguments over that. Well, it's this because of the hair. It turns that color with time because of the dirt. And I started coming to the conclusion, wait a minute, there wasn't just like one race of giants here. These are descriptions of two different races of giants, because one of them had double rows of teeth. And one of them didn't. And I started researching, because when I was researching the rock wall stuff, and trying to prove that it indeed is not a natural formation and is a man-made formation, I started saying, okay, there's got to be other stuff like this. And I knew nothing about mounds and all that stuff at the time, got way into the mound thing. I'm sort of an expert on it now because I got so far into it, went to so many mound sites and shot footage and visited them. My favorite was the Nephilim Graveyard of the Kings in Ohio. Oh, that was fucking great. Right across there's a cemetery where they've got some of these giants buried and stuff, but no, you start getting into it, man, and you find out there were two races of giants, not just one. And when I started researching and looking into Native American traditions and stuff, and I wait a minute, this sounds like the Mormon stuff. Go back, start looking. Joseph Smith supposedly pulled those golden tablets out of fucking a mound where they had pulled giant skeletons out of. And that's one of the things about Mormons is they talk about, these ancient Middle Eastern people being in the United States way before Native Americans are, and being giants and setting up the tribes. That was the whole basis for my films, Lost Secrets of Ancient America. And while I'm doing that research, I start going, holy fucking shit, wait a minute here. We may have to give the Mormons a little reconsideration. Everybody's been writing their shit off as being horse shit. Wait a second here. I don't think it is. I found so much information that backs up the whole story of the whole basis of Mormonism is about these two tribes of giants that were warring. I don't have time and all the info in front of me to get into it here, but I get into it heavy in Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1, so go watch that and research it yourself. But that's what their whole thing is based on. And I started finding stuff like when I went to Ohio and, went to all these insane mound sites that all have Babylonian numerical system in it. And they're all built, even though they were built thousands of years apart, they were all built using like a blueprint. And some of them align directly with the pyramids in Giza. That's not a coincidence. So, listen, man. Laugh at the Mormons, have a joke at their expense, have a laugh. The South Park guys, and they're all their fucking Book of Mormon stuff and all that. I got to tell you, more than any other religion, and I've studied them all, and other than some of the really early, we're talking Old Testament stuff, which actually does have a lot of historical relevance to it, and some of the old Quran stuff and all the real super old stuff. I got to tell you, man, more than Christianity, more than any other religion, I got to say, Mormonism, based on my own personal research, I never would have thought this would happen. I certainly didn't expect it to happen. But I have to tell you, from my own research, the core basis stuff that Mormonism is founded on is more legit and realistic, because I found all that evidence that there were ancient people from, I talk about the Amorites and all that. I mean, those people were here. This seafaring people. I mean, what we think about Vikings and all these different groups, these were all the same people. And they were traversing the globe thousands of years before what historical documentation says they were. And this stuff's been largely covered up. So, yeah, man, the whole Mormonism thing, I got to tell you. And I mean, the magic Mormon underwear, they wear those insulated underwear that have squares and compasses and shit on them. This is old-time mystery religion stuff, dude. But it also ties in with this more ancient stuff that even goes back to pre-flood Atlantean and even beyond that, to where you start getting into stuff like the Akashic records being written in stone and carved into monuments, thousands of years ago, pre-flood, pre-Atlantic. I mean, it goes on and on, man. And we're just the current incarnations of this. We've been here before in the past, but the key is to figure it all out now and put all the pieces and all this together now and use it for the benefit and the full exploration and full functioning ability of humans, and you do it now to change the world, man. And that's what all researching all this stuff is about. I was put here on this earth to do this for a reason, and it's been reinforced to me again and again and again every time I do this research and uncover new stuff, man. And I know a lot of you out there, I'm not alone. There are a lot of you out there that were put here to do your thing too, in whatever respective way you do it too. So shout out and big respect to everybody else, and all of those who, like me, who've been here before and are here again, and here to serve mankind. So gotta tell you, man, before you laugh at those Mormons, give it a look, man. I'm telling you. Just like I talked about the other night, there's a reason why the Mormon Church keeps the most extensive genealogical records on the planet, folks. There's a lot more to Mormonism than I or any of us really know, I believe. 100%. Whew. All right. That does it. Hey, again, this is our fundraising week. We got some help. We got the needle moved a little bit. And now we need 7 people who can come in at that $100 level before 3 p.m. on Monday. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Please get your contributions in. Let's not get it down to the wire. We've had some help, but we got a little bit more to go. I'll put links to the fundraiser in the read more section of the video and also down in the comments. All the links to the download shop, the archive membership place where you can subscribe and get your memberships, get a lifetime membership if you want. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Get all my downloads, get the Mystery Hollywood 5-part series, get Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 and 2 and all my other films and stuff in the download shop. and make a donation to support my work. I love you guys. This was some killer shit tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. I'm going to get back to work on the films, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.